Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CGC show. This is season 2. My name is Simon Powis, and this is a show that we're running through September and October 2020. We ran this season 1 back in March, April, and May, and it was a really wonderful experience. So I hope you enjoyed the new introduction. Can everyone hear me? And did everyone actually hear the sound in that introduction? I couldn't hear it on my computer, so curious to know whether that came through. It's been a while since I've used all the technology here, so feel a little like I'm fumbling around a little bit. So thank you for joining me again. And as I said, this will be a show that we're going to run every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. New York City time. I often say New York City time instead of Eastern Standard Time because other countries also have their own Eastern Standard Time. So New York City time. Okay, I see that. Good to hear everyone, and thank you for saying hello. They're saying there was no sound in the intro. Well, there will be next time. I'm sure I'll make sure I fix that issue. You can probably guess. You can probably guess what the music was. It was our favorite excerpt from the Rossiniana by Mauro Giuliani. So thank you everyone for saying hello. I see some very familiar names there. Jenny, Lynette, Jeff, Ming, great to have you here. Jeffrey, Mr. James Erickson's there. Martha, calling in from St. Louis, and Chad, Chadwick. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind comments, Chad, over all the channels and things. I really appreciate it. So I hope that this series of shows will bring you some joy, some inspiration, and that you might learn some things and also just have some fun. So I can see people are still trickling in, and I think we're a bit out of the rhythm. We had a really good rhythm going back in the spring, where we had Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4. So we'll see how this goes over the next 8 weeks. In today's session, I'm actually going to be talking about a little bit about the Bach Chaconne. And as I was preparing for this, scrambling around, I was thinking, oh man, I should bit off more than I should have chewed in the very first episode. And we're going to be looking in at an analysis, a walkthrough of the first section, maybe just demystifying it a little bit. I think it's obviously a phenomenal composition, much beloved by the entire classical music, Western music community, and obviously globally recognized as one of the great pieces ever written. And so it's lovely to be sort of touching such a masterpiece, having a look in at this. And we're going to do a very simple analysis where we're looking at some harmony and some elements of the Chaconne that make it the Chaconne that it is. Sometimes exploring such simple things really can be a fun realization how such grand and beautiful things can come out of simple components. So at the moment, we've just kickstarted our exam sessions here. September 1st happens to be Tuesday, and that's the first of the month for our fall exam submissions. This is where members of the CGC Academy can submit an exam. We have a whole curriculum at certain points. We have set pieces and recommended pieces and technical routines. And this requires a lot of work on the part of the students because they have to get all these pieces ready. And for the majority of these submissions, they perform them in one unedited video. So it's really like a performance. And also the technical routine can add a lot of challenges there, and they get quite substantial towards the upper grades. We're talking, 20 minutes of exercises and scales. So we've already had, where are we, Nikki and Dave? Where are we in terms of our submissions? I know there was 8 this morning when we had our meeting, but there's probably quite a bit more. There's usually a flourish at the beginning of the month and definitely at the end, people getting in their exams. So we'll be digging into those exams soon and very much look forward to hearing the progress that people have made. I will ask, before we move on, if you want to chime in with your best guess of how many exam submissions we will receive this session. I believe I was on the lower side. I said 83. Dave said 88. Nikki, I don't remember your number. Maybe you can pop it in the chat. I was talking to Roger Ramirez, earlier today, and he said 110. So to give you some guidance, last exam submission period, which is in the spring, we had 128 or 126 submissions. But that's when we had the first lockdown of the pandemic and everyone probably had a little bit more time to focus on their exams. So, Nikki said 81. That's lower than mine. Okay. So Carrie's saying 150. Matthew's taking 112. Nikki's at 81. All right. I thought it was higher. So it'll be very interesting. It will definitely change the month of this the CGC team, and Nikki, Dave, James Erickson, and myself do these exams at the moment. And that will change what our workload looks like towards the end of the month for sure. So before we continued on, I wanted to play. Now I have a little bit of a concern that the audio might not work because I wanted to do a video, but I wanted to play a video. We've been working on this series of videos called CGC Stories, and this is a really lovely way to have a look at some of the journeys of the members at the Academy, at CGC Academy, and it's partly, I mean, obviously the people themselves are often very special people that have put in a lot of time and effort, but it's also people that we can have a lot of material of, like we've maybe seen them at the summer school, have footage from them, have footage from exams, they've uploaded some videos, and so these are some people we've been grateful for, but also able to make these stories about. Because we have enough materials. And Dave Belcher, the community manager, has done an outstanding job of putting these together. So let me see if I can play this. I'm a little, bear with me if, I think I know what it is. Bear with me if the sound isn't happening, but I think it's going to be okay. I just found a button and clicked it. Here we go. This is the CG story for Carrie Conroy.
Each year at the CGC Summer School, we choose a select group of students who have shown exceptional service to the community called CGC Ambassadors. So many members of our community make excellent choices for this award, but a standout choice for us was Academy member and now CGC Ambassador, Carrie Conroy. Carrie has been an important part of our community for the past 3 years. Since joining CGC, she has always exhibited characteristics of kindness, encouragement, service to others, and just generally going out of her way to help enrich the community. Not only has she been involved in organizing a CGC meetup in Virginia, she also helped organize and still runs the DC Corner meetup. And at the summer school last year, Carrie crafted 2 books for the then CGC team, Simon and myself, called CGCA Be Inspired Journals. In these books, Carrie artfully gathered together touching contributions from many members of the community with words of encouragement and inspiration, and they were thoughtful gifts Simon and I are very grateful for. But in addition to being a dedicated member of the community, Carrie has also been a dedicated student, putting in substantial effort toward crafting a structured approach to her practice and being patient and moving one step at a time through the grades curriculum. Her many progress journal updates include intricate goals, exercises she's created to better master tricky passages, and what Simon lovingly calls arts and crafts, using color to mark up a score with harmony and analysis. This approach has taken her from the beginning all the way up through grade 5, including several momentous performances and milestones in her own guitar journey. More importantly, through this process, she has developed a sensitive, deeply musical technique that inspires everyone at CGC Academy. But perhaps the most special chapter in Carrie's story is that she has begun to pass on this patient, structured approach she has crafted in her own learning onto her daughter, who she has been teaching to play guitar. Many of Carrie's videos at the Academy exhibit great patience as she plays through a piece while also being mommy at the same time. That patience comes through clearly in her instruction of Ellie as well. These and so many other qualities have made Carrie an excellent ambassador of CGC and a true gift of life, joy, and inspiration for us all.
Yay! Congratulations, Carrie. Thank you so much for everything you do, through everything you've contributed and achieved. And also thank you very much to Dave Belcher. He's so good. You are so good, Dave, at making these videos. It's really a wonderful way to showcase showcase people's achievements. So thank you. Carrie also presented Nicoletta Tedesco with a book of her own. You saw those books that Carrie collaborated with a lot of people to make. She was the leader of those projects. She recently presented one to Nikki, and really, I think a very valued thing to commemorate the time and efforts and connections and relationships. So thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Dave. And yeah, so that's one of our CGC stories. We have 3 others. That was brand new. We have 3 others that are not as brand new. Maybe some of the Academy members have seen them, but we'll be presenting those over the next couple of weeks. So today I have the slightly daunting task of simplifying and demystifying a little bit about the Bach Chaconne. And of course, I'm taking the Bach Chaconne because I think it's an inspiring piece that ignites our imagination. I think it's exciting to take a piece that is such a masterpiece, recognized, and you know the greats of music have played this, and to look into it and find a way for us to help understand and demystify other types of music, maybe other pieces by Bach, maybe pieces by other composers too. So, before we dive in, the people on the email list who have opted in for the live notifications, that's, if you want to be on that list, it's classicalguitarcorner.com/live. And that email list will get you emails the day of the broadcast. And so I just sent out an email 15-20 minutes ago with a link to the worksheet for the score to follow along with this show. If you don't have it right now, you can go to classicalguitarcorner.com/season2, 2 being a digit, and you will also find it there. But I do recommend, if you want to attend these workshops, get reminded, and also get the downloads that we have for some of these episodes, then just head on over to classicalguitarcorner.com/live, and that will be the best way to go about it. Okay, so what I would like you to do is get a hold of that worksheet, which is essentially just a score that I've provided. It's 2 pages. And I've made it nice and spaced out so we can draw lines, arts and crafts time, as I like to call it, and draw in there and write in some harmonies and some ideas. So go ahead and find that, download that. If you can, maybe print it out, or at least have it on your screen so you can follow along. I'm obviously going to be putting it here on the screen as we go along, but I think that would be really, really useful. So let's see if I can dive in. Again, it's been a little while since I've used all of this technology, so bear with me. Now let me see, what am I going to do? Here we go. All right, I think that works, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, you can see my screen. I understand. Got it. All right, I think this will do. All right, so to start off with, I want to look at this score, and we want to map out our structure a little bit. Now, the Bach Chaconne is based on the Chaconne dance, which got very stylized from a rather lively dance from South America into this stately and slower, but still in a dance form piece. There's really a set of variations, based on a chord progression. And we have melodic variations that live within that harmonic progression and based on top of that progression. These variations span, there's really two ways that people like to think of them. There's often potentially a 4-bar variation and an 8-bar variation. So what I'd like to do to start off with, if you have that worksheet out in front of you that you sort of printed out and ready to go, I would like you to mark in a number. We're going to do every 4 measures, every 4 bars. So I'm going to put a 1 at that first one, then I'm going to put a 2 here. Now the first 2 lines are 4 measures each, so it's nice and easy. For this second one, we're going to have 3. It's the beginning of the 3rd variation. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where we get thrown off a little bit because of the spacings. And that's the beginning of the 4th variation. 1, 2, 3. It's nice that it's so even. So we'll have the 5th variation starting there. That's measure 16, if you've got the worksheet. 1, 2, 3, 4. We get to start at the beginning of a line again. Oops, where'd that go? I lost the number. Here we go. Oh, it doesn't like going onto another page, that's why. Let's try this. Of course, it wants to be finicky. Anyway, 6 starts at measure 20. And you can keep going for the next groups of 4 bars each, okay? So before maybe I'll play through it. I'll play through the first 8 measures just to get the sound of it. Very striking, majestic opening. Also, there's some lament in there, and we're going to talk about that. So let's have a look at a couple of things that tie together these 4 measure groupings. I use the word lament, and a lament bass line is something that spans the interval of a 4th and descends from the tonic to the dominant. So we talked about that last season. We have the tonic. This is in the key of D minor, so the tonic is D. It's right there. We want a different color. Definitely want a different color than white. White on white is not the color we would like. Thank you very much. That note there is a D in the bass. And then here we have an A. Why is it on the second beat? We'll address that in just a moment. But we're talking about the distance it travels. We're talking about an interval of a 4th, descending 4th. And then you can see here, C sharp, B flat to A. So we go D, C sharp, B flat, A. Now if we look at the second group of 4 measures here, number 2, D, C sharp, B flat, and A. So the same tetrachord that descends that descending 4th. I'm going to play from the top again and have a listen. Put your ears' attention on that descending bass line. Whoa, I've skipped to the middle section. Excuse me. That was an F sharp creeping in there for all those playing at home. I tried to emphasize the basses there as I went down that tetrachord. Of course, they're not the only notes. We have other bass notes as well. So it's not a completely exposed tetrachord there. So if I play all the notes just in the bass voice, we can see that we have that descending lament bass line, but we have other bass notes in there as well that make it a little less obvious upon first hearing or first look. Now, the lament bass line in this fashion is called diatonic. That means we're going down within a scale, and this scale would be the harmonic minor. Right? Harmonic minor with the raised 7th degree, which is that C sharp. If we were to add in all of the notes between D and the open string A, that would be a chromatic lament bass line, and we will encounter that a little bit later. So that would sound like this. These lament bass lines were often signifying sorrow and, well, lament. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it was a commonly used bass line. Another very famous instance of a chromatic lament is the Dido's Lament from Dido and Aeneas by Henry Purcell. So we have that bass line that outlines very often our groupings of 4 measures each, these 4 measure variations. Now, perhaps more importantly, in the context of a chaconne, we have harmonies as well. That really, that's what the chaconne is based on. So I've at the top I've got my little cheats because instead of trying to write them out quickly, I've got them done ahead of time. But let's just see if we can use our brains to start off with, get our brains warmed up in terms of harmony. We are in the key of D minor. So whenever you're in a key, we can think of the triad of the tonic, which is going to be D minor. That is D, F, and A. And here we can see that in root position. That means that the D is on in the base of that chord, as opposed to moved around, and that's what's called an inversion. If some of these terms are a little bit confusing or unfamiliar, I would suggest going back to some of the harmony workshops that we did in season 1. We actually cover quite a lot of this. So that's D minor, that's the 1 chord. Now, the most common chord apart from the 1 chord that we find in Western harmony, so I'm going to make that little, as best I can, a little Roman numeral 1. We have the 5 chord. And that's exactly what we find here, although this is not in root position. This is a 5, 7. This program was not made for this kind of writing. This is an A7 chord, A dominant 7. The notes in that are A, C sharp, E, and G. And in the bass here, we don't have an A, we have the C sharp, so it's in first inversion. Here on this, I'm going along these, the chords that fall on this bass line. The next here we have B flat, an F, and a D. I'll give you 10 seconds to think of what chord that makes. In order, it would go B flat, D, and F. That is a B flat major harmony. And then here we have, this is a D minor again with an inversion. And then that C sharp there, always a bit of a giveaway that we've got a dominant chord, an A chord or an A7. Down here, and this is sort of the point that we're going to get to today, looking through these things, again, just like here, D minor once again. Here we have, on the second beat, A7, which is the dominant 7th chord, same as before. Here, B flat, same chord. And here it's a little different, but that's the ending of this 8 measure grouping. So it's a little different on the ending there. Now I want to play through it one more time, these 8 measures, and I want you to listen to see if you can hear that progression. Let me play it exposed first, just the circled harmonies. D minor, A7, B flat, and then here we have an A major. Right? And it continues on. So the reason I'm pointing out these harmonies is that this is going to allow us to understand what comes further on in the piece. So if we take, let me just rejoin you for a second. Here we go. I might also chime in and see if there's any questions so far. But if we take this chord progression and we use that as the basis of our understanding for the entire piece, we actually are now equipped with a lot of the tools that we need to identify the materials that make up this music. All right? Let me just jump in to see if there's any questions. I wonder if I've been clear enough. I'm just going to have a look in there. Scott, hi Scott, great to have you with us. Scott, that's an absolutely excellent question. Scott asked, let me see if I can just do this. Yeah. Hey Simon, I'm seeing some chord inversions in there. Do those serve the function of maintaining that lament bass line? Absolutely, 100%. And in fact, so a question that comes up quite a bit, I was thinking about actually doing a whole episode, although I did talk about this in season 1, although it wasn't framed like this. But a question that comes up a lot is, why don't we teach chords at CGC Academy? And the answer is that in classical guitar music, we teach chords all the time, but in all sorts of different permutations. So we have a much more challenging time trying to group them into a standard set that's much more common in folk music, pop and rock music. So in those genres, you often find chords referred to in root position. D major, C major, A minor. In classical guitar music, we have all of these chords. We teach these chords, but the thing is we think about them in all conceivable permutations and inversions. So it's A minor, for example. This is a shape that a lot of people might recognize if they've played sort of standard chords that get taught for other styles of music. But A minor could also be this. It could also be this. It could also be this. Yes. It could also be this. No, that's C major. It could also be, what else we got? E. That, and then we can start getting out of position, of course. All sorts of things. I'm not even really going through too many permutations there. But we learn chords all the time. We just don't categorize them. We don't sort of refer to them as, because D major could mean many, many things. So we don't talk about the D major chord. That's why. And part of the reason is exactly what Scott pinpointed. I'm going to just put that comment up again. The question of, if we want to have a certain set of harmonies and have them live over this bass line, right? If we want to go 1 to 5, it would sound like this. It's an A7 chord that we often use in folk music, right? But it would sound very, listen to the bass. That sounds almost a little bit more pop songish, doesn't it? But with the voice leading of this, that means we're still going to get our A7, but we need to jumble up the notes so that we can facilitate that line. Very different. And it allows for us to have those lines in the different voices that are not so much considered. There are plenty of exceptions, but they're not as much considered in some musical styles. They let the bass leap around. Same harmonies, similar harmonies, sounds very different. So yes, the inversions in these harmonies allow us to create lines, albeit in the top voice, middle voice, or bass voice. And I feel one more question before going on. I always tend to have more to talk about than not enough. But Donna, hi Donna, asked, so if the piece is following the harmonic minor scale, does that mean every A chord will be an A major or A7 and not an A minor? Yes, in standard Western harmony, in a minor key, we almost always have a dominant chord that has a raised seventh. So that comes from the harmonic minor scale or the melodic minor scale. Both give that C sharp raised seventh that has such a strong lead. C sharp is so powerful there. If we had a C natural, it has a much weaker voice leading. It sounds quite different, actually. Yeah, it almost sounds like closer to C major. But the C sharp is really what gives us the dominant sound in the minor harmony. Okay, I'm going to continue on now with the score. So we've had a look at now at some of these harmonies and that follow that bass line. Now, one question I want to field before I forget about it is that, this piece starts on the second beat. It's 3/4 is a time signature, but we start on 2. So it actually goes like this: 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. Right? This is part of, when we think 3/4, we often think of a waltz. And when we think of a waltz, we often think of a Viennese waltz. Right? So, pa, 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 pa. But in certain other dance styles, we change where the accents live. And in the Chaconne, it's on the second beat. And when you know that, it actually starts sounding very different. Have a listen now as I go through the first 8 measures and I hear a bit of a push, a bit of a stress on the second beat. So I'll give a whole bar in, counting. 1, 2, 3, 1. Actually gives a very different feel to it. 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So it really flips our sense of direction and pulse with this piece. Now, I will say all of these elements that we're talking about, Bach ingeniously plays around with expectations and moves these around. So as you investigate further in this piece, which is really what I would invite you to do, is take some of these concepts, and more than the hour we can talk about it here, I want you to dive into this music and see what you can see, because it's a good piece for that. It's good, 4 bars, 4 bars, 4 bars, very regular in that sense. But all the variations that Bach comes up with are fun to sort of explore. I'm giving you a bit of a treasure map here and some guides, some clues to find what we're looking for. The last thing I want to point out, or maybe just discuss really, is I want to actually tell you the harmonic progression so you can write this in. I'll leave in those second beat things. All right. So we discussed some of these main chords. So is it going to move for me? There we go. First chord, D minor, D, F, A. here, and there are some chords, I'll qualify them, it could be different things. The second chord here, E half diminished 7, E7 half diminished, E, G, B flat, and D, followed by an A7 with a C sharp in the bass. Then we go back to, I'll just copy it here, back to a D minor again. I know this isn't ideal, hopefully this is not too confusing. Second beat, measure 3, there is a B flat. Then I'm just going to make another one. We have here G minor on the downbeat here. That's G, B flat, D, although that D is not present. And we have D minor and another A7. Some might call that a C sharp diminished, but we'll call it A7 here on that third beat. So something else you can tell about the harmonic, this is called harmonic rhythm. We have 2, 3, chord, chord, 3, chord, chord, 3, chord, 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 chord. So with even just these 4 measures, we have a harmonic rhythm that pushes us forwards. It gets more intense as we go ahead. 2, 3. Then chord, 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 chord. All right, so it pushes you through that to the beginning of that next variation. Now, as we go along here, this is all the same, identical underneath. It changes once we get to measure, I guess it's 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, great, my measures are not, I guess it's, oh, sorry, I must be counting from the first full measure. But, okay, this chord here, beat 1, could be called a G minor, but I think more correctly, it's actually an A7 with a suspension, because we've got the G and the E from the A7 chord, and the A and the C sharp, which it descends down to, is sort of suspended, and then it returns down. So we can actually think of this whole measure here as an A7, if you like. A to A7. It's basically that dominant harmony that returns as strongly then back to 1. All right, so we've now done a lot of the preparatory work. So let's have a look now at variations 3 and 4. Again, very similar, but what I'm looking for here is your ability to identify some of the elements we've identified together. We have the lament bass line, we've got the harmonic progression, and maybe even this this impetus, this push on the second beat. All right. So I'm going to play. I'm going to play from the beginning to give you a bit of a rolling start. Right. Let me just check my tuning. All right, from the top. 1, 2, 3, 1. So I wonder what we've been hearing, what kind of things you picked up on there, some similarities of what we talked about. Obviously, if we're talking about variations of which a chaconne form is, we've got melodic variations over a harmonic progression. The variation here is, I think, quite clear. It's a rhythmic variation and also we've changed texture, but we have this dotted rhythm and these 30-second notes here, which really make these variations very identifiable. So that's something that varies it up. But let's have a look. Okay, first of all, let's look for that pulse on 2, right? What have we got here, 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 here? Already we have some elements that are a little bit displaced. The C sharp is where the former C sharp was. The B flat's the same place, but the D, and the A actually moved to the downbeat. So we've already started pulling things around. Doesn't mean we have to accent there. No, we could actually push that second beat on the F there. It changes things a little bit. Maybe it brings the ear's attention a bit more to the line, the melodic line that's going on. What about the harmonies now? Let's start out. We had D minor to start off with. Absolutely. Same chord. It is the E7 half diminished, E half diminished 7, sorry, to the A7, identical. Here, D minor, identical. B flat, identical voicing, notes are in the same arrangement, same place. And then here we have, it's a bit more like the second ending, we've got that suspension there. Right? So already we're actually armed with quite a substantial amount of information to understand what's going on here. We've got some variations. The bass notes have been played a little bit in different places. The harmonies are pretty much the same with some slight variations. So it gives us a great sense of form. Like we can think of this as one idea, one variation. And then let's look at variation 4, which is going to be very closely tied to 3. Very similar to the first 2 4/bar variations in that it's quite closely linked to these 4 measures, just a little bit of variation, particularly towards the end here. All right, let's, because this is, I would like you to do your own digging in and exploration on this sheet. I'm going to keep going through. All right, so variation 5 now. I lost them down as tiny little 6. Give me 2 seconds. And all right, 6. Okay, so from 5 now through to, let's have a listen. This for quite a while. All right, then it changes quite substantially. Now, 5 and 6, what do we know? What's similar from variations 5 and 6 as to 3 and 4? It's this rhythm, this dotted rhythm that pervades these variations here. What's different? Well, I would say the texture is quite different. Here, back in variations 3 and 4, we have a thicker texture, a more bass-heavy texture. And then here, we have a thinner texture where the melody sings higher in the range and has less bass, much less bass presence to support it, much more ethereal. Now, along with that, and you know, there are many stories, I'm sure you can do some research, or maybe you know some of them about the Chaconne and about perhaps some some alleged tragic circumstances surrounding this. But this, to me, with this thin texture, high range, delicate, it's got a delicate feel to it compared to what has just come. And we get a new element, or a variation on an element we haven't seen before. Have a listen to the bass as I play this from measure 5. The bass, and this can be played with my thumb. It's not in bass register, but it's the notes with stems pointing down. Do you remember what that might be called? We talked about it very early on. If I'm going to play you this note here, all these notes going down, right? That is the lament bass line that we encountered in the first, well, all throughout, but now it is chromatic. And now it is also not interrupted by any leaps. It's just a pure descending chromatic line. D, C sharp, C natural, B, B flat, A. Same tetrachord, D to A. We're just filling in all of those chromatic steps. So I kind of want to play a comparison here. Let me play. I'm not going to move the screen, but so I'll tell you when I come back to measure variation 5. I'll play the first 2 variations, the opening measures, and then I'm going to skip to measure 5 and listen to the evolution of that bass line. Change now. Right? I really tried to overemphasize the bass to be clear there. So what I'm going to do is, well, I was going to say I was going to leave it there because I think I want to leave some more for you to explore. But let me just because it changes quite dramatically here, let's say, it's just another 4 measures, nothing fancy going on here, just another 4 measures. Let me just play you a little bit of this, and then I'm going to leave the rest for you to explore and discover some connections and evolutions and variations of your own. But such a beautiful piece. I mean, what is the most obvious thing that's changed, really? It's that we've gone from that dotted rhythm to now straight 8th notes. But is your ear starting to pick up on D, D, sis, D, bes? I can't sing that low. You know, that line starts to become so present. And then also maybe you're hearing how this melodic variation is still outlining the harmonies that we came across. Maybe I'm belaboring the point a little bit, or maybe I'm just enjoying playing. So for the rest of the download worksheet, I'm going to leave that to you to explore the similar concepts, to start whatever level of analysis you feel comfortable with, whether you can start seeing more of that descending bass line, that lament bass line, identifying the harmonic progression, maybe variations in where the pulse comes in, variations in terms of rhythms and maybe even chromaticism that creeps in, so notes that aren't in the D minor harmony. All of these kind of things is a really wonderful exploration. And I think the fact that that unit of 4 repeats is a wonderful framework Because when we come across something, let's say like a prelude, the cello prelude by Bach for cello suite number 1, for instance, it is a little bit more like you're out in the deep ocean, because the next chord could be anything, right? They're having this framework of those points that you can follow and lock in, and sort of, that's why I think it's a treasure map. You know they're there, but you got to discover it. They've changed, they've morphed, they've evolved, and trying to find where they are. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today in terms of teaching. I'm keen to know if anyone has any questions. And also, for everyone, I hear some people saying, "Oh, I just arrived," but this will also be up on a replay on the YouTube channel. So please do ask if you have any questions. I'm going to have a little sip of water. Just as a reminder, we're going to be doing these Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next 8 weeks throughout September and October, and we'll have a variety of topics that we'll be covering. I just saw a comment that said the video just stopped, but I think we're still going. All right. I'm not sure if Jenny's asking if I can play the whole Chaconne before we sign off, or just what we did. I could play the first 2 pages of what I printed out. I used to play this a lot. It's just such an outstanding piece of music. So yes, I'll play it for us to sign off the first 2 pages here. I haven't played it for many years, but I worked so much on it. I worked so hard on it. I don't think it will ever leave my fingers. So is there any questions? Let me see. Thank you for the comments. I'm glad it was a good start. I was kind of annoyed with myself that I picked this. I'm like, really? You want to start there? You couldn't have started with rest stroke or something else. So I don't think there's any questions that I can spot so far. All right. Well, seeing as it's right on the hour anyway, yes, I will play through the first 30-odd measures. Brent was asking about the piece. So the piece was originally written for violin, and this is from his 6 sonatas and partitas. It's from the 4th one, BWV 1004. It's notable for its length. So there are other movements in this partita, other dance movements, but this movement is as long as all of the other movements combined, thereabouts, depending, of course, how fast you play it. It has been arranged for piano by many of the luminaries of piano. Brahms arranged it for left hand alone because he revered it so much that he didn't want to change anything, because obviously piano can play many more notes than the violin, but he chose not to because the voicing and the range all plays into the structure of this. It's often described as a cathedral style work and if you mess around with the proportions of a cathedral, it changes things dramatically. However, if you look at some of the other arrangements, and the true arrangements, not transcriptions, like Busoni is a very famous one for the piano. This one it's extremely virtuosic, adding a lot of texture, of range, of scales. And it's an interesting one to listen to, Busoni, because that is the world that Andres Segovia was living in when he arranged this for the guitar. I don't think he was the first one. I think there's some other arrangements. I do believe Villa-Lobos actually arranged it as well. But it does give some insight into some of the choices, because obviously when we arrange things for an instrument, some things we can do, some things we can't do. We have more options or less. Funnily enough, the arpeggios are fiendishly difficult on the violin, and they're one of the easier sections on the guitar. And vice versa, the scales on the violin, by no means easy, but they come more naturally to the violin. Whereas on the guitar, it's the dreaded section of the scales that people they know it's on the horizon. So each instrument has its strengths and weaknesses, and one of the things to choose on the guitar is if you want to add notes. I played from this edition when I played. I don't have any fingering on it. I might do one in the future. I might do a class on it at CGC because I know it. I've studied it a lot. But I chose to really basically play almost exactly the violin version because it was enough to give me... I really like just playing what was written. But there's some outstanding versions out there as well that take more liberties with the harmony. All right. Well, I'll see you all on Thursday, 4 p.m. And I'll leave us with a very abrupt finish after measure 34 or so. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.